Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by not Kodalaski this week. He's off at a football game, but by God, Doomital Crossing is here. What's going on, Doom? How you doing?
Very good, very good. Desk Saga is finally at an end. This will probably be my new consistent camera angle for the future. But yeah, my desk is all beautiful and clean. I got my monitor arms set up, so now everything's all nice and just the way I want it. And yeah, it took a month longer than it should have, but we are so back.
Well, that's beautiful, and I'm happy that this desk thing is finally over because there's a lot of delays and stuff like that. So I'm happy that it's done, and I'm gonna plug something of my own that's finally done, and it took. You know, I can't say that it took longer than I thought it would, but it still took a long time. And that is Omega Metroid's 100% walkthrough for Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. I've got my fingers crossed that we might be hearing something about this game at some point in the not too distant future. So I went ahead, I played the game. We've got every missile location, every ammo location, every energy tank, every power bomb, every scan, every missile scan, every gallery image from the ending, like everything. Everything is there. So if you need any help playing Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, by God, Omega Metroid is the place to go. And you know what's one thing I realized after playing Metroid Prime Remastered and then playing Metroid Prime 2 Echoes is the amount of bosses in Echoes is absolutely outrageous. There is like an absurd amount of bosses in that game, and I knew how many bosses there were, but it's just like when you're writing a strategy on how to defeat these bosses, and you go play Metroid Prime, there's like 6 bosses. You go play this one, it's just like, oh my God, there's 6 bosses in like one area. So
yeah, it's like at least double the amount.
I bet you it's almost triple the amount. If you don't include things like the beetle and things like the incinerator drone and stuff like that, it's a hefty amount of bosses. And I'm not complaining about that either, by the way. And I played the GameCube version, so I was fighting Boost Guardian on like the OG way, where it's just like you're just constantly dying. There was no spring ball jump for the Spider Guardian fight, which completely changes the dynamic of that fight as well. But I still love that fight, and yeah, it's just I had a lot of fun playing Echoes again. It's a grind of a game for sure, but it was a lot of fun, and we're on to Corruption next.
Absolutely, but did you do hard mode though, Mr. Spiteri?
You know what? I'm going to. I have not done it yet, but I am going to probably not right away, but I feel like if I'm going to do hard mode, I'd much rather it be the hard mode on the trilogy version with snazzy
Nah, you gotta do that skill check, man. You gotta do the skill check.
Listen, I have no doubt that I could do it. It's not that and I've done it before, but it's just not something that I necessarily want to. Like, it's like playing fusion mode in Samus Returns. I can do it, I just don't necessarily want to do it, because it's a little bit of a grind. So, I did it once, okay.
What you really need to do, actually, is Dread Mode. That is, unironically, Dread Mode is so much fun. Like, I absolutely love it, and I think you'd enjoy it, too.
Yeah, I've done Dread Mode, and I think that it's, like, that one's kind of nice, because it's different. It changes the game. It changes the way that you play the game, whereas Hard Mode and Fusion Mode, they don't necessarily change the way that you play the game. It's just, like, more difficult, obviously, as the name implies. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's more fun, whereas, like, I think Dread Mode offers a vastly different experience, which can make it more fun. It can make it frustrating, but it can make it more fun as well.
It also helps that Dread Mode has checkpoints, so, like, when you die at the boss, you'll respawn, like, just outside the door, whereas you die at Echoes, like, you know, that Boost Guardian save station, that's a ways back.
Good lord, it's a ways back.
Or the Spider Guardian.
Yeah. So yeah, hey, and if you're playing Echoes, don't forget to scan the Spider Guardian before you go in there. Whatever you do, don't forget. That is the final boss of will wreck your 100% scan run. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Or the Caretaker class, Joan. That one's a super easy one to miss as well.
Yeah, that too. I can't remember where I scanned it, but I was somewhere, and I was scanning everything, obviously, and then I was like, what's this big, like, what's this big thing up in the sky there? And I was like, oh, the carrot. Oh, okay. Well, good thing I got it here. So yeah, those two in particular are pretty nasty. Although there are some other ones in there too that are pretty vile, like the dark shredders and like the shikelings and stuff like that. There's a lot of dubious scans in that game. It's a tough game, and by God, if you need help with it, OmegaMetroid.com is the place to be. So yeah, here we go. We're rolling into the month of September, which officially puts us into what is traditionally Nintendo Direct territory. There's been a Direct every year for the last 10 plus years, so I feel like it's probably pretty safe to assume that we have another Nintendo Direct coming in this month, which, you know, ever since, at least for me, Doom, ever since the release of Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like I've been able to enjoy. I think we've only got like one Nintendo Direct since then, but like it was just a nice experience because I wasn't like really really looking forward to anything, so I was able to be pleasantly surprised by everything almost. And I still kind of feel that, although I do kind of have some thoughts about the Switch and the Switch 2 and what kind of games might be coming, and that ties into Metroid. So I kind of gearing a little bit back towards like I'm looking for something specific, and I'm hoping that we get it. And I have to admit, I would be a little bit disappointed if we didn't. But you know, speaking of rumors, we got all kinds of rumors swirling about the next Switch, which for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to call it the Switch 2 because we don't know what to call it. You know what name I heard that I actually really liked was the Switch Advance. I don't know about that, but I kind of dig that name a little bit.
I could dig it. My personal favorite is Super Nintendo Switch, but I don't think they'd ever do that.
No.
I feel like with, you know, whatever they call the Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be, it's got to be something that clearly communicates that it's a sequel to the general public. I feel like they can't pull a Wii U with this thing.
Can you imagine if they call this thing the Switch U? Oh boy.
The new Nintendo Switch Deluxe. Oh boy.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a really good point. And even the Switch Advance, I don't think conveys clearly enough that it's like, I don't know, maybe they, like, I feel like there's a lot of equity in the name Switch, but like, yeah, they have to call it something that very clearly says like this is the new system, this is the next, like, and I don't know what that is, but Switch Advance, Switch 2, Switch, anything but Switch U sounds actually pretty decent. And new Nintendo Switch, that's no good either. But yeah, a lot of rumors flying out about the Switch 2. And I want to, you know, we've kind of planned to talk about this a little bit on the show today and talk about some of those Switch 2 rumors. And there was something that came out last week that for me, I think really kind of like added fuel to the fire about like, okay, I think it's imminent. And that was actually an interview with the producer of the Legend of Zelda series, E.G. Aonuma. And I think it was IGN. IGN asked Aonuma if they were going to produce any DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. And he said no. And you know, take that with a grain of salt, because he said no about some other things before that ended up happening, like Skyward Sword HD, all that kind of stuff. But I got to thinking, and I talk more about this on the Zelda cast, but like, I got to thinking, like, you know, that makes sense if like that team is already working on the next open world Zelda game in preparation for the Switch 2. Because in my mind, I was like, well, if they launch the Switch 2, they're gonna need a Zelda game in the first like little while of that console. So I'm just saying like 2 years max is when you need a Zelda game on that console. So I was kind of thinking like, okay, maybe that adds some fuel to the fire. Maybe we've got like something imminently coming here that kind of shows us when the next console is going to be. And of course, adding to that fire as well is at the Nintendo showcase that happened at PAX a couple weeks ago now. Or maybe was this a Gamescom? I can't remember.
Yeah, this is Gamescom, not PAX.
I'm sorry. At Gamescom, rather, there are a lot of people said that behind closed doors, Nintendo was showing off dev kits for the next Switch. So this puppy is coming. It's coming soon.
Yeah, so this is what I really want to talk about, is this Gamescom showcase, because this has the potential to be pretty big. And substantially larger than what I ever thought the Switch 2 was going to be. So before this, I was kind of in the ballpark where I think, the next console, it's probably going to be on par with like, a PS4, maybe like a PS4 Pro or a One X or something like that, but definitely not like a PS5 or a Series X. We're not going to be seeing, we're not going to be seeing Breath of the Wild at 4K 60. Like, chill out, guys. Not going to happen, and that's fine. That's okay. But it's good. So it's going to be an upgrade, but it's not going to be like a current gen upgrade. Well, I might be eating my words because if these Eurogame and Video Games Chronicle reports are to be believed, which I personally think they're pretty reputable sources, we might be seeing some visuals comparable to those consoles, not hardware comparable to those consoles. That's an important piece. Like, a lot of what we're hearing is being boosted by DLSS, which is NVIDIA's AI upscaling technology, and that's basically doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. So we're still getting hardware seemingly that's still, nowhere near what, the current gen consoles are capable of. But using DLSS, you can use lower powered hardware and then use this to do the brute of the force, and you can still get visuals comparable to the current gen systems, which, I had no idea that DLSS, if we're to believe all this, was that powerful. And according, I want to go to the Eurogamer report first, because so in the Eurogamer report, they specifically talk about how behind closed doors at Gamescom, there were a selection of publishers and developers who they sourced, who saw a demo of Breath of the Wild running at a, quote, higher frame rate and resolution. We don't get any more specifics beyond that, but
and to be
pretty
clear,
interesting
it's
nonetheless.
Just a demo. There's not.
Yeah, it is.
There's no
it
Breath
is
of the Wild
demo.
4K. Nothing. Although I'm sure that's probably coming at some point. But
yeah, exactly.
It's just a demo.
This is not indicative that this is coming to Switch 2. This is not indicative of backwards compatibility. It is just a tech demo running on either a dev kit or a custom PC that is targeting the Switch 2 specs. So that's what they reported last week. And then a few hours later, VGC, Video Games Chronicle, they released an article corroborating the Eurogamer report and also adding, and this is the one that really fascinated me, that there was another tech demo shown of the Matrix Awakened Unreal Engine 5 tech demo, which was released, I believe, in 2021, both as a marketing campaign for Matrix 4, as well as an Unreal Engine demo to show what was possible on that current gen hardware.
Which is really disappointing to me, because I wanted a Matrix video game, and when I saw that it was just like a little trailer, I was like, I didn't even watch it because I was so let down, and I was like, whatever.
Well, I would actually recommend people watch this, because this is a very visually impressive tech demo, and like it's like playable in real time. We're not talking like pre-rendered cutscenes or anything. Like, you can play it and experience it in real time. And yeah, obviously, it's just a tech demo. It's like 5-10 minutes, heavily scripted sequences. But I mean, it's just an absolutely gorgeous game, and just an example of what you can do with Unreal Engine 5. And according to the sources in a VGC's report, this demo was running with ray tracing enabled, which is kind of a more realistic lighting source, which also creates realistic shadows as well, which is really cool there. And that while it wasn't running exactly like what you would see on the PS5 and Series X, that it was running comparable to those consoles. And personally, the fact that this demo is even running at all, I think that says a lot, because you cannot run this demo on even the PS4 Pro or the One X. It's only available on the Series S and X and the PS5. So the fact that the Switch 2, using DLSS, is able to run this demo at comparable settings is incredibly fascinating and very much excites me for the future of this console.
It's fascinating. I don't know. I mean, on one hand, like, yes, obviously I am excited, because I think we would all like for like the Metroid Primes of the world or whatever, those games that come out, like whatever they are, to look as great as they can. It does make me a little bit concerned for the price of the console, because I think that what gives Nintendo such a big advantage, and why you've seen the Switch move 100 million units plus, is because it's far, far, far more accessible than, you know, a PS5 or an Xbox Series One S. So that does give me a little bit of pause, as well as I think back.
Well, I was gonna say not necessarily, because the Series S, I believe, is actually cheaper than a Switch. A Series S, I believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's either $250 or it's $300, which is the X is the powerful one. One's $500. Same with the PS5. Yeah, the Series S, which is the baby brother, that one is still either $250 or $300, which is hitting that Switch price point.
Right. So in Canadian dollars, it's like $800 for like a PS5, which I'm just not gonna do. So that does give me a little bit pause for concern. Not necessarily, again, because like I would shell out $800 for a new Nintendo console. I wouldn't for a PlayStation 5, but I'm a hardcore Nintendo fan, as you know, I want to see this console be successful. So my initial thought is, well, like, yes, that's really cool. I do hope that Nintendo, you know, I think that and here's an analogy I would use for what I expect the Switch 2 to be. I expect the Switch 2 to be a price jump, or not a price jump, a leap in technology akin to the 3DS to the DS. I think that's probably fair. And the gimmick is going to be kind of the same. It's going to be, there's going to be improvements, but the general gist of it is going to stay the same. And I think that's a fair comparison to make. And I think, like, if you remember when the 3DS launched, it bombed because it was super expensive. Now, Nintendo course corrected, but I would hate to see that happen again. And then the other factor that I guess I would kind of think too is, like, and maybe it's because Nintendo, since the GameCube, has just decided that they weren't going to go for, like, they weren't going to compete with, like, the graphical fidelity of their competitors. But, like, I think so many of their series now have kind of moved into, like, a stylistic approach where, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what, like, hyper realistic graphics and everything like that would do for Zelda or would do for Mario. And like I'm sure that, like, loading times are going to be improved, stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, you know me, I'm not a big tech head. Like, I feel like everything is loads and runs fine for me on my Switch for what I want from these games. So that it gives me a little bit of pause. But on the other hand, I do think it's exciting to see Nintendo kind of be like, okay, like, if this is to be believed, we are, we're a big boy, we're a big player, and maybe they get some of those, like, big third-party games. And that's, I think, the biggest advantage of if the Switch 2 is capable of running all of this technology. I think that almost counteracts the worries that I have right there. Is like, if you have, like, big third-party games that are, finally just like, okay, we're coming to the Switch, and we're actually not coming, like, 8 years later. We're going to come day one. Like, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no cloud versions.
Yeah. I mean, like, the Arkham trilogy, these games are like 10 years old, and they're just coming out now on a Nintendo console. And not to say that they couldn't have ran on the Wii U. I'm sure they could have, but it's just like, oh boy, like, if the Wii would have been a powerful enough console, or the Wii U wouldn't have, done what it did, then maybe if you're a Nintendo fan, you didn't have to wait for so long to play these games on the Nintendo console. And that's just one example of, countless examples. So
yeah, absolutely. If you I know you're not, like, a big graphics head, but I think a good example, if you want to see, like, what, like, a more cartoony, stylish game can look like on modern hardware, I would recommend checking out gameplay of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. That was a PS5. It was either a launch title for the PS5 or a launch window title. I can't quite remember, but, like, that's a really not just in the visuals, but also in the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the loading times as well. That's a great.
Let's not spend too much time. I mean, like, on the tech. Unless you want, like, if there's something that you want to just, like, quickly get out. I think I'm more so wondering what this means for specifically the game that's on the tip of all of our tongues, and what that could mean for for that.
I'm incredibly excited to talk about that. I do want to quickly go over this. I'll make it fast because I know you're not a fan of Nate the Hate, but I do want to touch on this a little bit. But so the Eurogamer and the Video Game Chronicle report, I think those are two reports that regardless of what your opinions are on, leaking whatever, I think those are reports you should take seriously. This next one, we're going more into the rumor department, where we're going less. I personally trust Nate the Hate. They're really not much of a leaker, actually. They more often than not, they're just a former developer that more so just kind of gives informed speculation on, what their process would be going behind the scenes. But generally, when they do talk about stuff that they've heard, generally it seems to be accurate, so I generally trust him. But again, we're going past a verified journalist source, and we're going into rumor territory. So Nate the Hate, today on his podcast, the day we're recording this, on his podcast with MVG, he said that he heard multiple sources from this Gamescom demo that gave a little bit more insight onto the Breath of the Wild tech demo from the Eurogamer report. More so on the specifics of what that was. So if you remember from the Eurogamer report, they said that it was running at a higher resolution, higher frame rate, but they didn't give specifics on it. Well, in Nate's report, he did get specifics, and apparently it was indeed running at 4K 60, which is kind of hard to believe. I never would have imagined that. Honestly, Breath of the Wild at a stable 30 would be just fine for that game. But if they did manage to get that at a full 60 4K, that's absolutely ridiculous. But even more importantly, and this is also something he clarified, the visuals was not the point of that demo. The point of that demo was to show off the loading times, and according to Nate, I have a direct quote up here. I want to read this so that I don't mess this up. The loading times were, quote, a smooth transition from menu fade right to the game. Load times were seemingly erased in this tech demo. And honestly, I think that is the most fascinating part of this. Not the visuals, but these loading times. Because if these loading times are that fast, that implies that the Switch 2 would be using solid state memory. And personally, of these new consoles, that's my personal favorite part of I think that's the biggest, it's a fundamental game changer. Obviously, I love my pretty graphics, obviously. I love my games look as pretty as possible. But those loading times actually fundamentally impact the gameplay. And so that, if this is to be believed, that is what excites me most about this new console, and the potential that has on the gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we could all agree, if you're playing Breath of the Wild, you pull up your menu, you warp somewhere, it would be a much more fluid and fun experience if you didn't have to look at a few tips while you're, waiting for whatever it is to load. So, I mean, that I think is exciting as well. And listen, having just played a bunch of Metroid Prime 2, it would be awesome if you shot a door and it just opened and you didn't have to shoot it a bunch of different times in order to populate a big room like Sanctuary Entrance or something like that. So I think
or you go to the Dark World and you get to just skip the cutscene and just go right there.
Well, actually, you know what? I kind of like that cutscene, but it would be, if you could skip it, that would be ideal. But yes, so I mean that's pretty cool as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing an actual from Nintendo, from the horse's mouth, because like you said, I don't I've had so many experiences with leakers, and it's so easy to just make stuff up and gain traction and say that how long did we hear about a Switch Pro and all that kind of nonsense, and it turned out that it was just the Switch OLED and all that. So I don't put too much stock into that. If that's true, that'd be great. But what I am eagerly am waiting is an announcement from Nintendo that's just hey, this is what we got going on. This is what you should know. This is when it's coming. And so this kind of ties into everything else that we're talking about with Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Prime 2 and 3, and the Nintendo Direct that's coming in the month of September, or at least we think it's coming in the month of September. So
I might eat my words. I have a feeling that by this time the podcast is out, that our audience is already going to be seeing a tweet from Nintendo about it. We'll see how poorly this ages or not. I don't have any sources. I'm just throwing a dart on the dartboard here, but I'm feeling it.
I was actually gonna say I feel like the last couple Nintendo Directs, Nintendo has been unusual in giving us 2 days notice instead of their usual 1 day notice, or a couple hours notice. So I think that you could be right. There's a very good chance that a tweet could be up by the time that a lot of people are listening to this. Hopefully that's true, and hopefully next week we could break down what we saw. But yeah, like I do think that it is coming. I think it makes a lot of sense. But and I want to talk about the Nintendo Direct in a minute and what we could see there. But I do not anticipate that if a Nintendo Direct was announced that they're showing off any of the new Switch or the Switch 2.
Yep.
I don't think that that's going to be part of the Nintendo Direct. So I think if everyone watch or like wanting information on the Switch 2 is tuning into the Direct, you're probably going to be disappointed. I think this is going to be like its own thing. It's going to be similar to the Switch, how it had like a reveal of its own. I think you're going to see that. But so what I want to talk about is the timing of when I think we're going to see that. And I think it's going to be before the year's over. And I think if I could put a magic cap on and do my best prediction, I think that sometime in October or maybe early November is when you see the announcement of what the Switch 2 is. And I don't think that it's going to be like as cryptic as... Do you remember like when they did the Switch announcement in October 2016? They kind of had...
Vaguely, yeah.
They had like the big Mario. He was covered behind the curtain.
Yeah. So, the one that's become a meme now. I love it.
Yeah. So they showed off the Switch, but they didn't really show off like any games, anything like big for it. I think that they would do something similar to that with the Switch 2, where I think that they would show it off this year. Tell you, like, I think they're going to fully explain like what the gimmick is. I think they're going to fully explain like what the specs are. I think they're going to fully explain potentially even how much it costs. Although I'm not as bullish on that, but I think that we're going to see it, and we're going to have a name, and we're going to have a release date, and I think it's going to be this year, and I think it's going to be in October, because in my mind, I would kind of be tracking like a spring to summer release for a Switch 2 2024. What do you think of that timeline? And give me your prediction for when we see it, when the Switch 2 comes out, and we can go from there.
I do not think we see the Switch 2 this year at all. I don't think we're getting that revealed until next year, personally. Again, I'm not basing this off of any information. I'm personally predicting a fall release, fall 2024 release for this. And I feel like Nintendo would either reveal the console either spring or summer, maybe in a June Direct or sometime before that. I'm kind of thinking that March to June kind of window for a Switch 2 reveal personally.
It doesn't seem like enough time if you're revealing it in June to get ready to launch in, let's say, in November. I mean, I guess that's still a couple months, but I feel like, I don't know. And another thing too, I'm kind of basing my prediction and information off what we know for the rest of the Switch's lineup, which by the time that this episode airs, there could be a tweet saying that, we got a Nintendo Direct going on. And if Nintendo announces like a bunch of games and new games, I want to be very clear about that. If they announce a bunch of new games for like January, February, March, etc., okay, I could walk that back and say like maybe we're not hearing about the Switch 2 until early 2024. But I think at the latest, it's going to be like January, February that we're hearing about the Switch 2, and that they finally do that big reveal. I get a feeling like when you look at the games coming out for the Switch, it seems to me that like there's a lot of games coming out that are kind of like, I don't want to call them holdover games, but they're not like not like system sellers.
You're getting a lot of spin-offs, you're getting a lot of ports, you're getting a lot of remasters. You're definitely like solid releases, but not a lot of original titles like you would typically see filling the lineup. You're seeing what typically Nintendo uses to fill the gaps as kind of their main course almost.
Correct. Yeah. So like there's, if Nintendo announces Super Mario Odyssey 2 in this Direct in September this year, that changes everything, right? Like that means that the Switch is still going to keep chugging along for at least a little while. But like the Super Mario Odyssey 2s, the Mario Karts, the new Animal Crossing, I feel like that's got to be in development, probably far in development for the Switch too, because we're not seeing those games come out on the Switch now, and that's also why I kind of feel like maybe when Aonuma said that there's no DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, I kind of feel like they might already be working on their next Zelda game, and they're trying to get that bad boy out by like 2026, early 2027, something like that. I think that's like a realistic timeline.
I don't think it's going to come out that soon, but they are absolutely like they're absolutely like they're definitely like doing ideas and experimenting on possible concepts for the next Zelda. Absolutely, 100%.
I think that they're maybe further in than we think, and so this is my thing. I think if the Switch 2 launches in 2024, like I kind of think it is, I have to believe that like, you know, it's gonna launch with like a Mario Kart in the first year for sure. It's gonna launch probably with a Mario game in the first year for sure. I think like year 2, maybe you get another one of your big guns, like you get an Animal Crossing in there. And I think like you got to get Zelda in there at some point too, like in the first year or not the first year, the second year, or maybe the third year, but like you need like your big guns. So that's why I kind of think like if it's coming out in 2024, like the Zelda team, they got to crank this bad boy out by 2026, 2027. But of course, we didn't talk about one specific game, which is Metroid Prime 4. Which I think like there is no universe now in which this is a Switch game and only a Switch game. Like this just
absolutely. So yeah. If they, it would be another Samus Returns situation if they just released it exclusively to the Switch. And I feel like, you know, Nintendo makes some weird decisions. I have to believe that they've learned their lesson with Samus Returns.
Well, and they made also such a big investment in this game already. Like they could have just released a crappy game, but they didn't.
They could have canceled. Honestly, they could have canceled the game. Like, yeah, we would have been really mad about it. But like in the grand scheme of things, like, you know, the Metroid audience is a very tiny portion.
Right.
Like, you know, most even diehard Metroid fans like myself, I would still be buying a Switch 2 even if Prime 4 was canceled. I'd be mad, but they still got my money. They wouldn't care. The fact that they invested so much money means that they believe in this project and they have a plan to invest in Metroid in hopes that, you know, obviously it's not going to become another Mario or a Zelda or even a Splatoon, but they see a future where it can, you know, sell better than it has, and a lot of that hinges on Prime 4's success. And I have to believe that they're planning it with Switch 2. And going back to what we were talking about before, historically the Metroid Prime games, including Prime Remastered, even though it's a fairly recent release, while it's not the primary, pun unintended, focus of those games, a big part of those games is to be a technical showcase for the hardware at the time. I mean, you look at, you know, Metroid Prime 1, a game that looked like unlike anything you'd ever seen at hardware at that time. Echoes, only 2 years later, blew the floodgates even further. You know, Prime 3 on the Wii, even though that was a sub-HD console, I mean, that game looks absolutely incredible with, you know, particle effects that, you know, you just wouldn't even think would be possible on the Wii hardware. And of course, most recently you got Prime Remastered, which I think just blew all of us away, and, you know, is now considered like one of, if not the best looking games on the Switch. And I think Prime 4 is absolutely going to be another technical showcase for the Switch 2 to show just what that thing can do in particular.
Which, and it's probably going to make a bunch of people mad. And in fact, I know people that are already mad about this, but like, I feel like I don't disagree with that at all. And I think they should do that. But I think if you do that, that means that you can't release Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch as well, unfortunately. Or if you do, it's going to be a really scaled down version. Because if everything that we have been led to believe is true about the capabilities of the new Nintendo Switch console, you know, you're just not going to be able to run that game in the way it's meant to be played on the Switch. And frankly, if it looked like Metroid Prime Remastered, I'd be fine with that. But like, I also feel like, you know, you're not wrong. Like, it's Metroid Prime, when it came out back in 2002, was like the best looking game that anyone had ever seen. Like, it was unbelievable. You know, maybe if you're like a hardcore PC gamer, it wasn't, but like for consoles, it was like, wow, this looks incredible. And I feel like they're hopefully trying to do that same thing with Metroid Prime 4, which I mean, like, I feel like they have to, or else why haven't we seen like at least a trailer for it or something, or a screenshot or like something? And I know that Nintendo usually doesn't, you know, like share any of that stuff unless it's coming out in the next like 9 months, but like something, just, you know, they've already broken that rule a couple times with Metroid Prime 4, so like, why not?
I think with Prime 4 in regards, I think it's more so they learned their lesson from that initial reveal. They decided to reveal it earlier than it should have, just to kind of tide over Metroid Fate. Because for those who don't remember, like 2017, before that presentation, it was a dark era for Metroid fans. Like, we were at rock bottom at that point. We were just, we had like 5 years of Other M being the last game, and that taking up the majority of the discourse. Almost no Smash representation in Smash Wii U. And then we got Federation Force, which for most people nowadays is a fine game, but definitely at the wrong place at the wrong time. And, with that being the most recent release, it was just, it was not good. And then Nintendo decided to finally tide us over and be like, hey, we got a 2D Metroid coming, but also we got Prime 4. We got the one you really want. It's a ways off, but it's happening. Obviously, that didn't quite pan out. They didn't plan on having to restart that thing from scratch. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like now Nintendo is in that mindset where they're like, hey, listen, we started it from scratch, so obviously you guys are aware that's going to take a long time. We don't want to show a trailer of this game and then be like, oh yeah, it's going to be ready in like 2 years from now. No, they want to show a trailer and be like, you're playing it this year. In fact, you're playing it in just a few months, in fact. I think that's Nintendo's mindset on this.
I mean, probably, but I also think that they probably could have been like, Metroid fans, since we already, kind of broke the mold for you once, and we know that it sucks that we had to restart development. I could have seen it where it was like, here's a look at Metroid Prime. It's still a long ways away, and it's in, do one of those like in development kind of things. I think that maybe they could have done that, but I think what they're doing, I think this has been developed for the Switch 2 for like a long time now. Like I almost think like as soon as it got like restarted, they were just like, nuh-uh, this is going on the next Nintendo console, because like by the time that this is going to be even close to ready, like the Switch is going to be outdated. So I think that basically as soon as it got announced that game was going to be restarting development, it was like the decision was made, like this is not a Switch game anymore. So I think that's another reason why we haven't seen anything on the game, which also your point is also well spoken too, because like I'm sure they don't want to show it way too early, but like I think that there's also a factor of like, we don't want to show it because it's a Switch 2 game, and we're going to be kind of letting the cat out of the bag if we do that a little bit in terms of like maybe some of the, the capabilities of that system. So I think that, I think like Metroid Prime 4, like honestly has potential to be a launch game for the Switch 2. I don't know if it's going to be like the launch game though. I couldn't see that. I couldn't see the system launching with like just Metroid. That'd be kind of weird. As much as like...
It wouldn't be just Metroid. It would be paired with like another big like system. So like I could see, weirdly enough, I could see Metroid and like a 3D Mario together, which might seem weird because hey, wouldn't a 3D Mario overshadow Metroid? And to an extent, sure. But when you only have like two major launch window games, like majority of people are gonna go to 3D Mario, but after they beat that, they're gonna need something else to play, and that's a good opportunity to show your big game that's really like showcasing just how powerful your new console is.
Yeah, I think like hypothetically, if let's just say that the Switch 2 launches in, I don't know, September. I think that like it would launch with Mario or like Mario Kart or like something. And then in October, maybe early November, then Metroid Prime 4 comes along and it's just like, okay, now this is your next game that you're going to play now that everybody's beaten Odyssey. Because Nintendo usually releases like one big game a month kind of thing. So I think that would be a great place for Metroid Prime 4. Because I think like history has shown us that if you get in early on a Nintendo console launch, you're going to do exceptionally better than if you get in late.
And for those who are skeptical about like, oh, Metroid that can't be a launch window title at all. Need I remind you, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 launched year one on the Switch in December, and it is currently the highest selling game in that franchise at about, I want to say 2.5 million copies now. So Metroid Prime 4 could absolutely do big in that launch window. Make no mistake.
I'm surprised that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 didn't outsell it. It's a far better game. Far better. Have you? I know Dak hates Xenoblade, but are you a Xenoblade fan?
I'm not really an RPG guy. I do want to give it a shot someday, but yeah, I'm not really familiar. I want to try X in particular. That one looks a little bit more up my alley. I think on the Wii U.
I think you'd like Xenoblade. It's like if Breath of the Wild was just a smidge more RPG. It's really fun.
Okay.
Anyways,
well, the thing with Xenoblade 3, I think that just released a bit too late in the console life cycle, and of course the library is much larger now. So you had mostly you had mostly hardcore Xenoblade fans rather than RPG fans in general checking out that title, I feel like.
Anyways, so yeah, I feel like that'd be a good position for Metroid Prime 4 to succeed. I know I've seen some people on Twitter that are just kind of like salty about like Nintendo not releasing Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch. And like I get it, but I feel like for the health of the series, like you just got to let it go. Like you got to
It's still coming to
it.
First off, why would you be salty? Like, you're going to get an even more... First of all, I guarantee it's still going to come to the Switch. It's going to be a cross-gen title. I mean, theoretically it's possible, I guess, but I personally just don't see Nintendo taking a title that was originally advertised for the Switch and just not releasing it on that console. I feel like... And I also... Obviously, the Switch 2 version is going to look substantially better, but I do genuinely feel like that it's not going to look too bad on the Switch. I feel like it's going... Because, like, Nintendo titles, you know, Pokemon aside, are generally, like, you know, they perform well, they look good. I feel like
it has an association
Prime 4...
with quality, yeah.
Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch is still going to be a good-looking title. Maybe it only runs at 30 instead of 60, but it's still going to have, you know... It's still going to look good, it's still going to have high-quality textures, it's still going to have consistency... But, maybe you get that 4K DLSS on Switch 2. Maybe you get 60 FPS on Switch 2. Maybe you get higher level of detail, but it's those same models. And, maybe you get ultra textures instead of light textures, etc., etc. It's going to be very comparable, but with the Switch 2 version being, obviously, the superior one, I feel like. But again, I feel like the Switch version is also going to look really good.
Yeah, like, I kind of think to myself, like, if this console is everything it's supposed to be, and they've been developing Metroid Prime 4 for this Switch 2 console for, like, a while, and it runs, and it, like, graphically and load-wise, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I think that they probably could release a version of Metroid Prime 4 that was scaled down for the Switch, and it would probably look a lot like Metroid Prime Remastered, and that'd probably be great. I would hate to see like a Cyberpunk scenario where like the PS5 version
not worried
plays
about
great. That. Well, you know what? I'm not either, because I don't think Nintendo would ever do. I think they would sooner just be like, we're not releasing this on Switch if it ever came to that. So like regardless, I think I've seen some people salty on Twitter about it, but I mean, also, like I said, like if it came to that, like I think launching on the Switch 2 is going to do way more for the Metroid series than sticking it and keeping your promise and launching on the Switch. So we'll see. I think
if you're a Switch owner and you have no plans to upgrade to a Switch 2, you're still going to have a very good looking game that's going to perform just fine. But if you are someone that does want to invest in a Switch 2, you're going to get an even better looking game. I think it's not a matter of, oh, it's a worse looking game. It's a glass half full situation, not empty, if that makes sense.
All right. Well, let's talk about this rumored Nintendo Direct that, we think it's going to happen. It's happened historically, like, every year for the last... And by the way, I forgot to mention to you, and we could talk about this a little bit later, but, like, actually, let's just save it for another day. I was going to say what we could talk about the actual Metroid Prime 4 game, what is some other keys that might make that successful for the series, but let's save that for when Dak is back. Let's talk about this Nintendo Direct that allegedly is coming. A lot of people think so. And I really think that like this Direct is a really, really, really important Direct, because I think like depending on the types of games shown, that tells us indirectly how far away Switch 2 is. Because if it's
pun
like
intended or not,
oh,
you said indirectly.
Yeah, go Andy. Yeah. Well, yeah, but you know what I mean, like, right? Like even last Direct, I was just, when I watched that Direct, I was like, okay, there's one really big new game that was announced, and that was Mario Wonder. And I'm as excited for Mario RPG as the next guy, but I mean it's a SNES remake, right?
I'm excited for Mario RPG, and I'm not even an RPG guy. I think that's saying a lot.
So I think, listen, I think if this Nintendo Direct comes around and you see info on the Princess Peach game, you see info on Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the Switch, you see info, maybe they even announced Metroid Prime 2 Remastered and 3 Remastered, to jump the gun.
Oh my god, if they do the
I mean, I would lose my mind. Like, I would lose my mind. But like, those are the types of games I feel like if they announce those types of games, I feel like it's writing is on the wall that like the Switch 2 is imminent, because like those are placeholder games. Let's just call it what it is, right? Like those aren't like main event, fill your belly kind of games. Those are the kind of games that those
are appetizers.
Exactly.
Really good appetizers. You know, I love my mozzarella sticks, but those are, you know, that's not what you're going to the restaurant for.
Right. Or if you see a direct that's full of like DLC, Pokemon DLC, or I don't know,
Mario Kart Wave 6.
Sure.
Pikmin DLC, I think it seems, like a fairly good prediction.
Heck, maybe Aonuma lied to us, and there's Zelda DLC, right? Like, those are the types of things that I think is another example of like, okay, the Switch 2, or if the big announcement from this direct is like, man, we got Mother 3 coming to Game Boy Advance Online, or like,
It's not happening.
But I'm saying, if that's the big announcement from this direct, I think that's like a telltale sign, brother, we are getting this Switch 2 drop like soon.
Yeah, so you actually, and I talked about this after the June direct, I believe, but you mentioned Mario Wonder, and that's actually why I think we're not going to be seeing a Switch 2 reveal until next year. I feel like Mario Wonder, that's such a huge game and something that Nintendo would want to focus all their energy on for right now. I don't think because a new console would definitely take a lot of focus away from that. And Mario Wonder is going to be a big game. I think a lot of people online. I'm not saying it's going to be anyone's game of the year pick. I'm talking specifically sales here, but 2D Mario's historically sell gangbusters. The new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe port on Switch, a game which I think none of us really care that much about. That's like one of the top selling games on the system right now. It's like I want to say 14 or 15 million copies. Like it's doing insane for a 2D Mario game, and that's a port of a Wii U game. And and historically, like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, best-selling Mario Bros. Game on the Wii. I think New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, best-selling Mario game on the DS, even though 64 DS was the launch title for that system. And so I'm not saying I think it's too late for Mario Wonder to outsell Odyssey, considering that was a launch title. But point is, this game is going to sell a lot, especially going into the holidays. Like, that is going to be a Christmas gift that a lot of kids and, even adults our age are going to be opening up under their tree. And so I think Nintendo wants
What does that have to do with the Switch 2? I don't think it has anything to do with it.
Well, because the Switch 2 is going to take a lot of focus away. You're going to have people that was like, you know what? This can wait. Switch 2 is like on my mind right now. They want Mario Wonder to be on the consumer's mind right now. And then Mario RPG for a brief time shortly after that, going to the holidays. And then once all that is cleared, and once we're really into the morsels, the appetizers, that's when I think Nintendo wants to be like, all right, I think y'all ready to eat now.
I don't agree with you, unfortunately. I think, to your point, Mario Wonder is going to sell regardless. Like, it's going to sell regardless. And I think that if you announce, like, the Switch 2... And listen, you just... All you're doing is saying, like, here it is, this is what it is, this is when it's coming. Maybe it's coming, like, 6 months, maybe more, maybe 9 months down the road. I think that if you did that takes away nothing from Mario Wonder or Mario RPG. But it also, like... I think that if you don't do that, it's like... And you get those kind of games like I was talking about in the September Direct, where it's not like any kind of main course games. Then when you get into January, February, you're just like, what the hell is going on? You're like, what's happening? What are we playing? Like, what are we doing? And I think
sounds like a good time for a February Direct, if you ask me.
Well, sure, but like I think that if you do that, then you wait until the summertime, like you said, for like your reveal. I think that timeline doesn't make sense to me. And I could be completely wrong. I probably am. I'm sure that I will.
I could be completely wrong. None of us have any info to go off of. We're just spitballing in the wind right now.
I feel like, to me though, like I feel like announcing the Switch 2 takes nothing away from Mario Wonder. I really don't think it does. Especially if it's going to be like 6 months or 9 months until the Switch 2 is actually out. You still have your Christmas time where you can buy it, and same for Mario RPG. Like I think that I think that would be a good time because like, and again, this is very dependent on what kind of games we get announced at this direct. But like, yeah, like I mean, if you get the Princess Peach game in January, you get Luigi's Mansion in February, maybe you get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 in March. And they, you know what, I think Nintendo would probably keep releasing like a handful of Switch games for the Switch after the Switch 2 was out, or at least maybe doing like the, I don't know, available for both kind of deal. Although maybe not now that I say that, I don't know. But like, I feel like I could see that, and like maybe the console comes out April, May or something like that. I think that timeline kind of works. I think it kind of works. Because like if not, like what are you doing in the first like half of 2024? It's a barren wasteland, and that could look like a complete doofus by the time this airs. Because the Nintendo Direct might air with like all these sweet games that you're gonna play, but right now it's just kind of like. It seems weird to me. Like, it seems like every, like, big game that they could release would probably be better served on the Switch 2 at this point.
Well, the thing is, first off, every single Nintendo console at the end of the life cycle is a barren wasteland before the new console releases. But what I'll say is, like, actually in comparison, I actually don't think this is so much of a barren wasteland in comparison to what we usually get. I mean, what did the Wii U have before the Switch came out? It's like Star Fox Zero? Like well, that was like that's your big game.
The Wii U was like at least the Wii had like Skyward Sword in its last year. It had Donkey Kong Returns. It had a couple games.
That was 2011, not 2010. Yeah, that was yep. One. Yeah.
So it had Super Mario Galaxy 2 in 2010. It had Donkey Kong Returns. There was games to play on the. I mean, granted, you're not wrong. Like it's not like there was like a steady influx.
Well,
I'm
talking about the months leading beforehand though, or the year beforehand though. Which right now, I think we're like right now in a fairly good transition period right now. You know, we have a solid cap off to the end of 2023, which I still think is going to be the year of the Switch. And then so far in 2024, you have one new original spin-off game, one new port, and probably some new stuff, because Nintendo usually announces their first fiscal year of 2024 plans usually by the time the September Direct rolls out. So I have a feeling we'll see a little bit more of those earlier plans fleshed out.
I just want to interject really quickly here. I just looked up what Wii games came out in the year of our Lord 2011. So we got Skyward Sword, and of course there's a Kirby game because like Break Glass and there's Kirby, but we also got such gems as, and there's Mario and Sonic as well and Rayman, but we also got such gems as ABBA, You Can Dance, which is fantastic. We got We Play Motion and De Blob 2. Those are game of the year anywhere in the world, by God.
You know what? There are some De Blob fans out there. I've never played it myself, but like. There's a passionate community behind those games.
I gotta find this ABBA game, dude. I can't. I think it's a Just Dance game, but which is still going strong on the Wii, by the way. Seriously,
I remember.
Just Dance comes out every year still for the Wii.
On the Wii, I remember. I remember. I don't know if they still do that, but I remember like a couple of years ago there was like a report about that, and it was just like wild. But I mean,
the last year of. The N64 had some amazing titles. Had what do we have? We had Perfect Dark. We had Majora's Mask. We had Paper Mario. Like that was a rockin' time.
Conker's Bad Fur Day. Yeah. That was actually in 2001, just before the GameCube.
Last year of the SNES went hard with Mario RPG and Donkey Kong Country 3. The last days of the GameCube, I'm a little bit fuzzy on that one, but I feel like they still had some hits.
2005 was a pretty good year, I think. 2006, I can't really remember much that came out besides Twilight Princess. I
don't think much because like the console launched early 2006, right?
No, it was a holiday release.
Was it? All right.
I remember. I bought it at midnight. My first ever midnight console release.
Okay. Well, it's just to say, like, my point is that I feel like the Wii U side obviously has the exception for what a disaster that was, but like I feel like the Switch is certainly winding down, and there are games announced, but they're not like I think if you went and looked back at the year, like whatever, let's say that the console launches in May of 2024, and you look back at the year before, and it's like Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder. Like that's a pretty consistent, like, good final year with like what we've seen from before. And like there's just not enough cool games, I don't think, to like keep that going any longer. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just itching for the new console.
I mean, I think we all are, but I don't know. I feel like obviously 2024, it's not going. 2023, not even for Nintendo, just in general, has been a pretty stacked year. Like in terms of quality original titles, quality remasters and remakes. Indie games have been good. AAA games have been really good. And I feel like this has just been like a really quality year for the industry in general. And so obviously I don't think 2024 on Nintendo side is going to match this, with some of the stuff that we've seen this year. But I think they have enough to like coast off and ride until the Switch 2 is ready for release, when we'll really see those big first party style tongue twisting my words, when we really see those big first party titles really start pounding the pavement there.
So I think we differ by about 6 months, right? Like I'm kind of predicting like spring, summer at the latest. You're saying maybe fall. By the way, the year 2006 was a rough year for GameCube games, but man, 2005 is actually full of bangers. I forgot how good this year was.
That's what I was saying. 2005 was like
Fire
huge.
Emblem Path of Radiance,
Mario Strikers, Mario Baseball.
Yeah. Stacked year. Prince of Persia, Two Thrones, that's an underrated game, I feel like. So yeah, I think time will tell. We'll definitely see. But I think that this Direct coming up is going to be a huge indicator of maybe which way it's leaning. And we've talked a lot about the Switch 2. We talked about Metroid Prime 4. Just, I guess, what are your thoughts about what we might see at the Nintendo? And let's just call our shot right now. Do you think we might possibly see Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered? Give me a Samus's percentages.
I thought you were about to say Metroid Prime 4, and I was going to say absolutely not, no way.
That's a 1%, and I don't like to give 0%. So
Prime 2 remastered though, ooh. So Prime 3, that's going to be a fairly low percent for me. I'm going to put that at about a 20. Prime 2 remastered, or maybe more of a Prime 2 HD in this case, because I don't think it's going to be quite the level of the Prime 1 remastered.
I agree.
Oh man, this
while you're
coin flip for
deliberating, let me kind of walk you through my
thoughts. I'm gonna go 52%. 52%. It's a coin flip for me. But I'm gonna just.
Well, hold on. That we see Prime 2 HD.
That we see Prime 2 HD.
Okay.
Just Prime 2 HD. 52%.
Okay. I think that Nintendo maybe revealed its hand to a degree with that Pikmin release a while ago, where they released Pikmin 1 and 2 on the eShop. I could see that happening for like Primes 2 and 3. I don't think they're going to get the remaster treatment at this point. I think that they could probably release like the trilogy versions and include all those control schemes, but I think they're going to look roughly the same. And I wonder if they don't both just come out like kind of like Pikmin did, where it's like, hey, they're on the eShop now. If you want, we're releasing like a physical cartridge in 2 months. Come and get it if you want it, right? Like, I think that could be a good formula for Prime 2 and 3 to follow, because I mean, Prime Remaster didn't blow the world away with its sales numbers. So I could see that, and I think that if we are in the final days or the final months of this console, I think that's the type of game that makes sense to release, because, you know, following my own logic here, if I think the console's coming out in spring or summer, and I think Metroid Prime 4 is coming out with that console in the first couple months, and I think it makes sense to release Metroid Prime 2 and 3 before that happens, I feel like it's probably, you know, like I'm not super confident, but I have to follow my own logic. So I feel good about the chances that we potentially might see this.
Yeah, I could see them bundled together. I could also see them separate. That's personally the prediction I'm going with, is that they're still going to be separate releases. I think that, and this might just be hopium on my part, I don't think it's going to be Metroid Prime remastered levels. I do think that Prime 2 and 3 aren't going to be more so just straight ports like, you know, the Pikmin games or Mario 3D All-Stars. I think it's going to be more kind of in line with like, you know, a Wind Waker HD or a Twilight Princess HD, where, you know, it's the same models, but, you know, you got redone textures. You still have the dual analog controls and some of those quality of life and accessibility improvements that were done in Prime Remastered. I think you'll see those ported over as well. But, you know, otherwise, again, it's largely the same game. You know, just, you know, running at 1080p on the TV, 720p docked, which is fine. I mean, that's more than enough. You know, as long as those games are on the Switch, I will be a happy camper.
Yeah, I could see them getting released individually, but like at the same time. So like very similar to Pikmin 1 and 2. You could buy one of them on the eShop, or you could buy both of them on the eShop. But there's a physical copy that has both of them at some point down the line. I could see that. And yeah, I'm not as optimistic as you that they would be. I think that they would definitely have to have the control scheme from Metroid Prime Trilogy. Like for I think it would be the trilogy versions that would be getting re-released. And I think that would probably be it. I think that, and I would be okay with that, because like playing Metroid Prime 2 on the GameCube, like it still looks great, to be honest. Like there's definitely some times where you notice when you got an enemy up close or something like that it's a GameCube game. But I mean, for the most part, like golly, that it just looks so awesome.
Prime 2 at 1080p looks freaking beautiful. Oh my gosh. And all you would really need to do for that game is just upscale it to 1080p, and then maybe improve some of the performance dips, particularly in that Emperor Ink fight. You do that and like you're done. That's really all you need to do. Anything else is just gravy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic possibility. A few more direct predictions before we get out of here. I think that I don't know exactly. Like, I'm not going to predict any big games are coming out, because I don't think that there is like that big of release on the horizon. But I think in terms of what you're going to see, it is going to be a lot of that, like kind of what I mentioned earlier, like ports, remasters. I bet you there's a lot of DLC, and I bet you there is an emphasis on NSO. You laughed when I said Mother 3. I could like legitimately see that. That would be a huge draw. Hold on. That would be a huge draw to get people to resub to NSO. And September makes a lot of sense, because like if you remember, that's when the original NSO came out, which means a lot of people's subscriptions rolls over in September. So like if you have something that they've never got a chance to play before, I don't know, maybe that draws people in. And it's a great game, and it's not as controversial as people think. I've played it, and it's there's nothing in that game that wasn't an Earthbound.
The only thing that makes me hesitate on that is I feel like if Mother 3 was coming to NSO at this time, at least I feel like it would have been in that big Earthbound trailer when the beginnings and the SNES game came to NSO. I feel like that's when it would have dropped. Just everything.
Yeah, but the Game Boy Advance wasn't part of the NSO at that point.
It was? I thought it was. Maybe I'm misremembering.
No, Earthbound has been out for a while.
You're right. That was this year.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was this. I thought that was last year. You're right. Wow.
So there's a chance. And you know what? I hate to be one of those guys, but like Mother 3 is awesome. Like, it's really fun.
I will say that I still don't think Mother 3 is happening yet. I will say though, there's absolutely going to be some NSO updates, and I'm very curious to see what they could be. We could finally see. I'm hoping for Metroid Zero Mission. I'd also really like to see Donkey Kong 94 on the Game Boy app. That's such a criminally underrated game. It's so good. So I really hope that comes out. And then I think less likely, but something I really want is Smash 64 as well. That would be so hype. Smash 64 with online play, like that would be so much fun.
Yeah, that would be cool. Hopefully Zero Mission. That would be awesome. There's also a guide for that, by the way. So yeah, we'll have to see. Hopefully
we're
next week.
We're just cranking out the guides.
we honestly we are. We're doing some good work here over on OmegaMetroid.com. So hopefully this time next week we're breaking down exactly what we see, and I think that this direct is going to give us a lot of clarity on the direction of the future of Nintendo Switch. So yeah,
the direction.
Heyo, that was intentional. Hey. Okay, well that is going to do it for us for this week. Let us know what you think about our guesses and our theories and our thoughts and our spitball ideas. We'd love to know your thoughts over on Discord, so come and check us out over on there. You can check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at Doomital Cross, and we plugged it a lot. But here we go, plugging even more. OmegaMetroid.com. We got guides coming out the wazoo. We've got all kinds of stuff over there. And if there's Metroid news, we're going to be all over it. So keep it locked to there. Subscribe to the Omega Metroid podcast wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe. Leave us that sweet, sweet, sweet 5-star review. We would love to see that. And that's going to do it for us. Hopefully we're breaking down some big Metroid happenings next week. But until then, everybody, take care.